Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com and the weekly news wrap up for Friday, May 29th, 2020, the WNW 433. The big story is not what went on with those cops up in Minneapolis or the rioting, not the big story. Listen, the story that has national and international implications is Hong Kong. I've been to Hong Kong. It's a beautiful place, but that was back when it was Hong Kong and not part of China. And that's what's happened. And Trump displeased with China's proposal to crack down on Hong Kong, says White House. And this isn't a big deal. Now they say that this new law they just passed in the Chinese Communist Party just passed, the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP. They say it's going to take place in September, but effectively, it's already happened. This is why Trump is going to, give a news conference on it and bring a lot of attention to it. And what's he going to do? What's he going to do to counter? And folks, this has big implications with the U.S.-Chinese relationship and also anywhere where China does business. I mean, so what is Trump going to do? Here's what I think he's going to do. Stop visas for Chinese students. That's a no-brainer. Most of them are with the Chinese military. Sanctions, I think they're going to paint them as civil rights abusers, and you have not seen the nastiness that's going to happen in Hong Kong when these protesters, fully get into gear and get going, and how hard and deadly and ugly the crackdown is going to be. More tariffs, I think that's a given. And again, they're going to tag the Chinese Communist Party human rights abusers. Also, I think there's going to be stepped up U.S. Navy presence in the South China Sea. Already have had ongoing incidents going on. This is, get U.S. businesses to move back to America. That's also been talked about actually paying U.S. businesses to come back. Is he going to do some or are these things? I think all the above. There's going to be, you can count on financial fallout with this. This is, you may think, well, it's part of China. They can do what they want. Well, it was given back to them more than a couple of decades ago under treaty, which, the Chinese agreed to give them 50 years of independence and democracy. And, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, can't have that. They can't have people, breaking up their totalitarian communist regime where they harvest the organs of people, of dissenters, and persecute Christians and run concentration camps and have social credit scoring systems, and where you have no rights at all. You can't have China, this little territory with rights and voting and democracy, and yet no. And I think China is going to cut its nose off to spite its face. A few years ago, I had firefighter Mark Taylor, who wrote the Trump prophecies on, and he said this about one of his prophecies. He says, China is going to be put in its place. Listen, I think China is over. They're done. And wait until the onerous secret police, Chinese military take over in Hong Kong. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be a total lockdown. It's going to be hell on earth. And the rest of the world probably should sit up and take notice, but they didn't after Tiananmen Square. They killed 10,000 people in Tiananmen Square, and to get to this Chinese, this China wet dream with the Chinese Communist Party, they only murdered 40 million people, actually more than. But listen, Trump is going to shine a spotlight on this while we have this huge unemployment. We had another, a few more million people file for unemployment. We're well over 40 million unemployed Americans. I'll talk about that just a little more. But the push to cut off capital, to sanction Chinese leaders, to cut off trade, and I think China is already seeing what's coming down. This kind of shows what they're going to do. They're not going to back off on Hong Kong. They can't, a totalitarian communist regime can't have a little bright spot of democracy. China secures Brazilian soybeans as trade war restart appears imminent. And, China just reneging on another deal. They reneged on this 50-year contract that they had with, that they did in the UN. It was a big deal. It was a treaty. So they reneged on that. They reneged on the first trade deal with the United States. And Trump, blurted that out. And I think they're going to renege. They've already been reneging on this one. I mean, they're already buying soybeans from South America or Brazil or whatever. Of course, I think it's the real, the Brazilian currency, is in the tank, so China can get more soybeans for their yuan. But this is going to have global impact and also impact for war, impact for trade, cyber attacks. This is a huge deal, all started by little Hong Kong. And there's going to be other Western countries that signed on to this treaty that allowed Hong Kong to be free and democratic. There's going to be other countries, big ones that will, particularly the UK. They're not going to take this lightly. What China is about ready to do. And it's really going to expose the Chinese for exactly what they are: a totalitarian communist regime, a brutal communist, godless communist regime who hates Christians and every other religion on the face of the earth. Trump signs executive order stripping social media companies of liability shield. I almost made this the first story, but man, this is a huge deal. You talk about the Empire Strikes Back in Star Wars. This is Trump striking back. This is a big deal. And if you read along here, the executive order also requires DOJ to work with state AGs to make sure they enforce laws on deceptive business practices. He added that the social media companies are tantamount to a monopoly, says the president, and have unlimited power to shape and alter the national conversation. True that, my friend. When Twitter tags tweets as misinformation, they did this over his voter fraud, that mail-in voting is going to be massive fraud, and there's plenty to back that up. When Twitter tags tweets as misinformation, they cease being a platform and effectively become an editor with a viewpoint. What they are close to promoting or ignoring is nothing. Hold on, I just want to read this. This is a big deal. Nothing short of political activism, Trump said. This censorship is a threat to freedom itself. Imagine if your phone company edited your text messages or blocked your phone calls. And of course, all these tech companies are China-centric. That's the model they want. Top-down, godless, atheist, weasels, no human rights. All the stuff floats up to the top, just like Hunger Games. No civil rights, no civil disobedience, no redressing the government, no complaining, or you end up like Tank Man. So, and Donald Trump has been right on about this from the very beginning about how dangerous China really is. I mean, we've had, one presidency after another just ignore the whole deal, ignore the cheating, ignore the reneging, ignore the onerous, red Chinese requirements, the thieving, the intellectual property theft. And no, we could just get into that 1.4 billion market and we'll just make money. We'll just ignore everything. How stupid. Mary Barra, president of General Motors. Now you're saying how stupid it is to move your production from the U.S., shut down plants here, and keep them open in communist China. And listen, America agrees. America is on most citizens in a recent poll said that they don't want to buy things from China. They want to cut that down. Can you imagine importing General Motors products from China? You think people would buy them? Woo! Which just shows how heated this whole thing is going to get at precisely the time when everybody is loaded up on debt and loading up on debt. And yes, China is creating a lot of debt as well. I want to talk to you a little bit about this story. This is the guy. They went crazy in Minneapolis. National Guard activated to respond to Minneapolis violence, and George Floyd's death at the hands of police. It's it's an awful video. I mean, they're kneeling on his neck. He gets bystanders saying, "Hey, man, you're killing him," and they did. I think when they picked him up in the ambulance, I think Mr. Floyd was dead. It's an awful, awful video. But the left is using this to say, oh my gosh, America is racist, burn everything down, which I don't see how that helps the black community to burn down your stores and loot everything and cause businesses to go under, and the people that employ your citizens and service your citizens to, well, burn them out of business and loot them out of business. I don't understand that. And I blame the mainstream media for this. I mean, we just had the video of the black guy up in a nursing home in Michigan, a boxer, pounding on old white people because they're old white people, and any outrage over that, no, nah, no. And the mainstream media just wants this narrative that America is this racist country, and it's not. Listen, there are white people that do occasionally do things to black people. That's bad, and there are black people that do nasty things to white people. But I don't think either group is racist. The whole country is a racist mess. I just don't think that. And then, because if they did, they wouldn't have to manufacture all these hoaxes, these hate crime hoaxes, like Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, hands up, don't shoot. The forensics said that was totally fake. The guy was fighting for the officer's gun inside the car. He was charging him like a football player. He was a huge guy. The officer was small, and the officer shot him dead. And he got called into action because of a strong arm robbery caught on video. It was a hands up, don't shoot, was a total hoax. This is according to Eric Holder, the then Attorney General in the Obama administration. You also have this Jesse Smollett, that Trump guys, people in Trump hats wanted to hang him. Total hoax, total fake. There's just one after another. Air Force Academy in 2017 used the N word. We don't need you here. Total hoax. Total, not even by white people. K-State 2017. Total hoax, another N-word painted on by black people. Racist graffiti in Missouri. Trump-inspired black churches set on fire by a black guy, but blamed white people in Trump support. I mean, listen, if America was such a racist country, they wouldn't have to manufacture all these hoax crimes. And all these hate crimes. The hoax hate crimes, I should say. But the mainstream media they finally got one where a white guy was abusing and ultimately killed a black guy, and it's awful, but it's not what America is. But listen, the Democrats, this is all they have. They have hate. They have racism. Don't vote for anybody white. Don't vote for any Republican. Don't vote for, even though the Democrats are destroying them, destroying their lives and destroying their families with their policies and destroying jobs and businesses. The Democrats are all pro-China. So, I just think it's an awful thing to try to project that America is this racist country, that cops are running around, they're all white, and they're running around hunting down black people and sticking their feet on their knees on their neck and trying to kill them. It's just not the case. And I blame the mainstream media, and I blame who works for the Democrats. I mean, really, I think it's awful. I want to talk a little bit about the economy. I'll just start with this. I mean, pending home sales plummet by 35% year over year, biggest drop ever as buyers forfeit. That's a huge sign. Forfeit deposits. People are walking away from buying a home. That's more than a third. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been wondering, this should be, we have all this unemployment. We just had new unemployment numbers. It's over 40 million. We're 41 million unemployed. We've had all kinds of rents not paid, credit cards not paid, mortgages postponed, all this stuff, unemployment benefits. I've been just doing polls on people. They just opened up restaurants here in North Carolina. And so we went out to a restaurant, and my lunch was $23. The guy waiting on us, nice fella, known him for years, and he says, he's a black guy. And he says, I says, this whole unemployment thing is crazy. I said, did you take any unemployment? He says, no, I worked here. We did takeout it was Longhorn. We did, we did 1,000 Mother's Day dinners, and that's as much as any weekend we have for Mother's Day. We did a great job. I worked the whole time. I was off for a few weeks at the very beginning, but I worked the whole time. He says, this unemployment is crazy. I said, well, how are people doing on unemployment? They love it, he says. They are with their kids. They are making as much or more in many cases with the unemployment. He says, that is wrong. That is wrong. He says, I just had somebody pick up lunch, $46. They had a little card for their unemployment, their unemployment check. He said they used one of those little cards here in North Carolina, a debit card where they load it for you with your unemployment money, $46. Lunch, $46. $46. And he says, man, and people aren't paying their rents. They're not paying their credit cards. They're not paying their mortgages. They're out partying. And I said, it's going to be awful. I said, I agree. But I said, so, so I came up with this, that the information about this debacle is awful, but it's being covered up and covered over with all this printed money. Now, they're going to do another package. Mitch McConnell's talking about it now. I'm sure they're going to, they're already talking about them reducing this unemployment thing so it's not an impediment for people to go back to work. But we've lost millions of jobs permanently. We got 41 million unemployed now. All those jobs aren't coming back. I mean, I don't know, 25%, 10, 15 million jobs probably aren't coming back. And, this is awful. We've got, the official unemployment rate, they said it was 14%. I called John Williams about a couple of things. And he says, the unemployment rate is that I got it at shadowstats.com without all the gimmicks and the crap is 40%. 40%. And I said, do you think it's being covered up by all this funny money and all this stimulus and all this money flowing? I said, oh yeah, no doubt, but it's not gonna last. He also says the GDP, the first quarter, they had 2 good months for the lockdown, and then March was a disaster. He said it was down 5%. Okay, he says this time it's going to be down 50%. Second quarter, month over month, 50% loss of GDP, half of the business activity. He says, now the good news is I think that's where it's going to bottom out. It's not going to get much better in the third quarter, but I don't think it's going to get worse. They're going to start opening things up. And incidentally, here in the state of North Carolina, the governor, Baby Killer Cooper, he will not commit to the RNC to say that he'll, make sure that it gets all taken care of, and that it will be done correctly, and that they won't have any impediment, and we'll have it's 2 months. It's in August, and Roy Cooper just playing politics, which is why this COVID thing is a giant political football at this point. And I think they Fauci and Birx, they missed by orders of magnitude. These people are quacks. They missed by orders of, they missed every major call, these two. They shut down the entire company. We have 41 million unemployed living on some phony, crazy money that they pumped out in the biggest spending bill ever. What could go wrong? I actually had one woman at a different restaurant, a cafeteria. They're forcing us to come in here and work. I said, they're forcing you? She says, yeah, they're forcing us. The insurance covers us being off. I can't come in here. I don't want to come in here. Well, I mean, people want to be off forever with printed money. Do you know what the inflation rate's going to be? Do you know what's going to happen to the country if this continues? I mean, they're going to have another stimulus package. I don't know what shape it's going to be in. It's probably going to be less unemployment benefits, but I mean, we're talking about 50% loss of GDP. Now, Williams is he thinks Trump's better than any Democrat. And, he thinks that this is not Trump's fault. This whole economy thing was foisted on him by these idiot quacks, and China was a big player in the World Health Organization and all that. And he says, the good news is that we'll probably bottom out in the second quarter. We'll go up from there. Now, but there's not going to be, forget the V-shaped recovery. That ain't going to happen. But he could be in a definite upswing by November. But then you have this whole China wild card, and the trade tension's going to happen for that. They're already buying soybeans from Brazil. And, why am I telling you this? Because I don't want you to be lulled into a false sense of security. Basically, 2 things: the printed money, the unemployment, the extra unemployment, the stimulus checks have covered over this. It's like a stage 4 cancer patient. Should I really, take the treatment, or should I take these opioids? Take the opioids, you'll feel great. And you take the opioids and you think, wow, I feel great. I got stage 4 cancer, but I feel fantastic. And you're not fantastic. That's what's going on. And then all the postponed rents, the missed credit card payments, the mortgage payments postponed, the commercial real estate market, and all the businesses that aren't going to open back up. One poll said 1 in 5 restaurants won't open up again. Somebody said, well, they'll just open up another one. That takes money. That takes capital. Can you imagine closing down a restaurant like, let's say, Ruth Chris? Ruth Chris, who probably didn't have a big takeout business, okay, the steakhouse, but fabulous food, but probably not a good takeout, business. They don't have a drive-through window like a Hardee's or McDonald's, right? They all did fairly well. Imagine them reloading all their beef, all their sauces, all their condiments, all their napkins, all their food, potatoes, salads, all the stuff you need, desserts, baking, all the stuff you need to open up a big restaurant like that. Any restaurant. $15,000, $20,000, I don't know. In the thousands of dollars. That takes capital. And that's if you did lose your lease, and you probably didn't. But, the landlord has to be paid. They got taxes, and they have upkeep on their buildings, and they have to get a profit. And that, I don't, listen, the two big things, all the printed money and all the postponement of rents and credit cards and mortgages. And this is awful. And I think that's why it's not appearing to be worse. It's the stage 4 cancer patient, which is the last stage before you die, taking opioids and not taking the tough medicine. And man, I feel great. I guess I didn't have to have the tough medicine. But the tough medicine is coming. And this is going to be going on for a while. So I'm just telling you, don't be lulled into a false sense of security. The other thing that says that this is rough is, and I got to show you this. People have sent me this, and I looked into it, and this is on the Federal Reserve website, Board of Governors, Federal Reserve System, reserve requirements. Can you read that along with me? Announced on March 15, 2020, the board reduced reserve requirement ratios to 0% effective March 26, 2020, this week. The action eliminated, read this and take this in, folks. Read this and take this in. This action eliminated reserve requirements for all depository institutions. This is on the Federal Reserve.gov website. This action eliminated all reserve requirements for depository institutions. Banks don't have to have money on reserve. Remember the 2008, 2009 debacle? What was all the talk about? Raising the reserves of the banks. We're going to raise the reserves of the bank. Remember Jamie Dimon talked about his fortress balance sheet, $1.7 trillion in reserves. And now you don't have to have any reserves. I called several of my economic guests and friends, and two consensus, one for sure. One of them is it makes the banks weaker. It doesn't make the banks stronger. Period, the end. Okay, so the banks are weaker. The other thing, and I got this from John Williams, along with John Rubino, they both did the same thing, and I think the same. He says, and Williams was adamant about it. He says, I'll tell you what's going on. They are reducing the reserve requirement to 0 because they want people to lend money. They want banks to lend all the money they can into the system. That's how severe the Federal Reserve thinks this is. They want banks to loan all of the money it can into the system, and basically, wink, wink, nod, nod, we'll back you up. We won't let you fail. We'll pay all the money we need to make sure you don't go under for doing crazy stuff like having no reserves and lending money like a drunken sailor. And I don't know how anybody, of the 40 million people with unemployment benefits, and many of them are going to go back to work, but boy, not all of them. There's no way. I mean, how many businesses are going to go under? I mean, Hertz has filed for bankruptcy. Think they'll cut employees? They're going to sell 450 some odd thousand cars out of their fleet. It's going to crash used car prices. I mean, another metric, new car prices are going to be cut in half. Excuse me, new car sales. We sell about 16, 17 million units. That's going to be, 8.5 million units. Cut in half, new cars, boom. You think all the other rental cars, not just Hertz filing for bankruptcy, they're not going to go out of business, but they're going to shed a lot of weight, a lot of employees, a lot of cars. You think they're going to be buying a ton of new cars? Think they're going to be buying the same amount they were before? How about Enterprise, Alamo? How about Avis? How about all of them? National. You think they're all doing good, or they're all sucking? I think they're all sucking. Sears, Penny's, all the other stores that are filing for bankruptcy that won't even open back up, all the restaurants, 1 in 5. That was in Illinois, and I think you can extrapolate that all over the country. 1 in 5 restaurants will not open back up. And the banks have cut their ratios to zero. Banks don't have to have their own money anymore. No more fortress balance sheet, JB Diamond. You can have zero of your own money. Loan all the money you can. We'll back you up. That's what that means. And that is a sign of desperation. And it's a sign of what the big powers in the background are thinking about. That this is far worse than 2008. They could get away with packing the banks full of reserves and getting them to hold capital and, strengthen their, remember the stress test and all that? Bet you they don't have a stress test now. And this is a big, big tell about what the Federal Reserve thinks of the economy and thinks of how things are going. Hey, banks, you don't have to have any money anymore. Don't worry, we'll back you up. Loan money like a drunken sailor. That's a big tell. So don't take any risk. Things are going to get better. I still think Donald Trump will be elected. This whole virus thing was not his fault. I think he handled it pretty dang good. He cut off China within the first 10 days. I think the whole thing is caused by China, which is another separate deal from Hong Kong. I guess China feels like we might as well just take Hong Kong back over again because we certainly don't want to be knocked out of power by some democracy pro citizens that we can't shoot every one of our 1.4 billion citizens. And so the crackdown is going to be onerous. And they know that they were flying people from Wuhan all over the world while they wouldn't fly anybody from Wuhan anywhere in China. They know that. They know that. This is an awful a thing that happened, but it's being used for political purposes. Otherwise, the mainstream press, the legacy lying dog media that they are, wouldn't tell you that a 65-year-old drug is dangerous. All of a sudden, it's dangerous. That's not in the safety sheet that every drug has. They list all the pros and the cons to them. It's been used for, the military, I was telling you last week, is 42,000 doses a day. And all of a sudden, this is a dangerous drug. And all the world leaders are using it. And people like Amy Klobuchar's husband, who was a former presidential candidate, and Chris Cuomo taking some form of hydroxychloroquine. Yeah, all the world leaders are taking it, and all the rich people are taking it, but it's dangerous for you. Here, have a ventilator and die. So, we live in some dangerous times, and it seems that we just can't attack just the problem that we face. There's a political component to go along with all of it. Don't be sucked into it, okay? Don't be. And just be prudent. I mean, keep preparing. Just keep preparing. Do stuff that cuts your risk. Good news, hey, yay, good news. Is good news. And I'm all for good news. And I hope Donald Trump by the third quarter, actually the fourth quarter will be the election, it'll be November, and he should have things rolling pretty well if the globalist, New World Order weasels don't try another attack or some other pandemic. They hate him. This whole idea, and the other thing, this whole idea that Donald Trump is some agent of the New World Order. They've tried to kill him. They've tried to kill the economy. They hate all of his policies. They hate he backed out of the Paris Climate Accord. They hate that he killed the Iranian nuke deal, which is a total fraud and a bribe fest, according to top advisors in Iran. They hated the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They hate that he built a wall. They hate him. All they have is cheat by mail, which is well known. Many examples of cheat by mail. They don't have the wall and the massive amounts of illegal aliens coming in anymore. Nobody's going to put up with that with the corona thing. So that kind of backfired in their face. And they lie about racism. They lie that America is some racist country. If you just vote for me, I'll set you free. And it's awful. And I don't think most people of color are going to bite on that. And I think that's what they're really worried about. They're worried that people of color are like, hey, you're not making my life better. Tell me what you're going to do, Charlemagne the God, ready with Biden. Tell me, don't sell me fear. Tell me how you're going to make my life better. And Biden can't do that. They can't. So, listen. I tell you all this stuff because I want you to be informed. Hate and evil wants you fearful, like this coronavirus here in the state of North Carolina, and the baby killing Governor Cooper. He can't commit to bringing in tens of millions of dollars from the RNC. I don't care. Listen, every state's been whacked And our governor can't commit to that because, he's a big time Democrat, and he doesn't, want any Republican convention in his state, even if it costs tens of millions of dollars, because, he's got a government check. He doesn't care. Total, our state has 10.5 million people, and people are like, oh, well, I'm scared. Why are you scared? There's less than 800 people died in North Carolina of this pandemic, China flu. Less than 800. And probably almost half of those are people in nursing homes. I mean, this is outrageous, fear-mongering fraud that the legacy media is foisting on the population. So don't bite on it, and don't be fearful, all right? Fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, above all spiritually. That's the big one, folks. I don't just say that as a slogan. Get your spiritual house in order with Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. He's real. That's the other, and one of the last thing, I've been watching Ancient Aliens, and they can never bring up Jesus Christ. We'll talk about ancient aliens of 4,000 years, 10,000 years ago. How about ancient alien Jesus Christ? How about that? 2,000 years ago, well documented, well sourced. Read the Lee Strobel book, The Case for Christ. It lays it out, sourcing. Christ was real, is real, he happened. Can't talk about that. It's the aliens that made us. They didn't. It's a lie. Put your faith in Jesus Christ. And prepare yourself mentally, physically, and above all spiritually. God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit are firmly in control. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments and your donations. That helps us out. And again, thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com.